Hi. Yeah. So we are ready now. Dr. Kaisar Jamil will now take over and start this program.
Good afternoon and greetings to all from OWSD National Chapter of India. I, Dr. Kaisar Jamil, former Scientist C of CSIR, IICT, presently head of the Genetics Department at Bhagwan Mahavir Medical Research Center and President of OWSD National Chapter of India. First of all, I like to thank NEERI Director Dr. Rakesh Kumar for readily agreeing to host this webinar on COVID-19 dealing with new norms. One of the recent mandates of OWSD has been to find out how our members world over are dealing with this pandemic and what steps are being taken by us to mitigate or to help in this crisis. Hence, it was wonderful that Dr. Atya Kaple, Vice President of OWSD of the Asia Pacific region, has taken this initiative of getting the experts together so we could learn from our experts. Just a few words about OWSD. It is a vibrant network organization comprised primarily of women from the developing countries. And I have been associated with this as a member, as a vice president, and as a president, and now the national chapter president of India. And our objectives are to promote female education, to promote leadership in women, encourage entrepreneurship, to strengthen their role in development of their country's needs. And also OWSD has established to play an important role in increasing women's access to science and technology, engineering, maths, STEM, and to promote greater participation of women scientists and technologists in the sustainable development of their respective countries, and also to collaborate at the international level for the world community. And since Tonia will be here, she will be talking more about the international scenario of OWSD. She is from the head office of OWSD, Trieste, Italy. So today I'm honored to coordinate this meeting, this webinar on COVID-19, dealing with new norms. How shall we live? This lockdown has ended. So, in the wake of this viral pandemic, staying healthy is the topmost priority on the minds for most everyone I know. Vitamins are flying off the store shelves. Internet searches for immunological boosting tips have increased, and there is more panic and fear among individuals how to mitigate this, and it is a challenge. So I have also been reading daily coverage of COVID-19, so many publications of SARS-2 and causing the disease called COVID-19, manuscripts and research articles from world over, and also scientific data describing about its mode of infections, its symptoms, and how to deal with it. But most importantly, the point which struck me and caught my interest was that scientists have described its mutations, which has significantly increased its ability to infect cells. So one small tiny mutation or an SNP change in this coronavirus significantly increases its ability to infect cells through modifying or increasing its coat protein spikes, which enables the virus to stick to the cells and help in infecting. Controversies in treatment options also exist due to lack of research and also due to lack of antiviral or more specifically anti-COVID drugs, which are not on our horizon. As COVID pandemics has swept the globe, infecting 7.6 million and causing death of 4.2 million as on 2nd June 2020. We have witnessed the silent deaths of elderly. It is amazing to note that this virus is the size of about 0.85 attograms, or about 1/1,000,000th of a trillion gram, has created a havoc in the entire world. Presently, we are living in the post-lockdown situation where we have in our mixed population asymptomatic individuals, carriers of the virus, and the vulnerable group with comorbidities and aging population. In order to determine its risk factors and biomarkers, more research is needed. Many Indian labs and institutes in several countries are working hard to develop a vaccine to beat the pandemic. Having said this, I am eagerly waiting to hear from our learned expert speakers COVID realities dealing with new norms. I am happy to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Renu Swarup, Secretary, Deputy Government of India. Hope we can keep to our timings. Dr. Renu Swarup has served the Department of Biotechnology for nearly 29 years and was holding the position of Senior Advisor till she was appointed as Secretary to Government of India in April 2018. She is also known as the most influential woman in the world, in India. She has also supported the cause of women and has been a pillar of strength for all OWSD activities. She was awarded the Biospectrum Person of the Year award in 2012. Besides many laurels to her credit, she is the most popular and loved by women scientists of our country. Over to you, Dr. Renu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamil. Thank you so much for your very, very excellent,
very brief,
excellent remarks. Am I audible to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and first of all, very humbled with this introduction that you have given. You yourself have been a champion of women scientists. You have steered a lot of activities within the country and led the women scientists into taking on larger and greater initiatives. And we are very pleased that this whole chapter that today is organizing this, I think, compliments to Atya and the team for having thought about this wonderful initiative. So thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to join anything that Atya organizes, and I think the way she is, I've never been able to say no to Atya for any of her initiatives. So good luck, and really pleased to be here. And thank you, Dr. Mande. Dr. Shekhar Mande has always been an excellent colleague and a patron for these sort of activities. I think what you've touched upon today is very important. We are all talking about this unprecedented times that we are in, and I was checking with Atya today. Our audience today is the young researchers and the students and the scientists from different institutes. So it's important for us to understand that where we are positioned, what really is the new normal that we are looking at. New normal is being talked about everywhere because yes, it is a new normal. We kept talking about new normals. And the new normal we were talking about is how is our whole scenario going to change in terms of globalization, in terms of new technologies, in terms of disruptive technologies. We were looking at a new normal in that sense. We were looking at Industry 4.0. We were looking at probably an Industry 5.0 to come in very, very quickly. We were looking at biotech going to occupy a very important position globally, India occupying a globally very, very important position. But none of us ever thought that we would be struck by a pandemic. We never thought in our lifetime we would ever experience a pandemic. We did prepare for epidemics. We set up CEPI, a global coalition for epidemic preparedness, but we never thought that we'll have a pandemic. Initially, none of us could even accept the fact that we were in the midst of a pandemic. We kept thinking that this is something which has come and it quickly go. So there was no need for a new normal. We kept wondering whether work from home is something which is possible or not. And let me share with you, in the government system, it actually seemed it was just not possible at all. There was a total resistance to even think of getting connected virtually, working from home. But what happened? We quickly adopted this new thing and adapted to this new ecosystem as it worked on, because we realized that this is something which has, yes, come during our lifetime, but it's going to take a while before it goes away. Now what happens? Either we just sit back and keep waiting for this virus war to finish, or we prepare ourselves well enough to be able to fight this war, but even to be able to not just fight this war, to use this challenge that we have before us as an opportunity to see what is it that we can do, looking at this opportunity that we have within this huge challenge that we have. When you look at addressing this challenge, trying to see what has to really change to become part of the new normal, there are different scenarios in which this has to happen. And if you try and understand these scenarios, broadly, I would define it at three: the global, the country level change that has to be brought in terms of every aspect, be it the policies, be it our behavioral aspects, be it our economy, be it our technologies that we bring in at the country level. We then have to see what changes we need to bring in at the organizational level. And most importantly, at an individual's own self level. Because till the individual does not change, it's going to be very difficult for us to bring in organizational and country level changes to come in. So it's the individual that really has to then change, has to see how you adapt to this new environment and move on. Now, just coming very quickly, and I'm conscious that we are speaking more to a scientific community. I will focus on the science aspects of it, which we all represent. From the scientific field, what really are the challenges that we are going to face? And we talk about general challenges, and then I'll come specific to the COVID in the next 5 minutes that I have to be able to conclude my talk. In the scientific challenges, as I said, we were all preparing for a globalization. We were preparing about and looking at global collaborations. Over these last many years, and in fact, even in my own 32 years of career that I've been here, and before that, my research career, so nearly about 40 years of scientific research and development career, we've seen a huge change that's come in. Initially, we all started with individual-driven research. It was a PI-driven research, my science, my research. How am I contributing to it? What paper am I getting? Is my name there or not? We then moved into multi-investigator research. We realized that as things were moving, single investigators were not capable of bringing in the diversity which that particular research aspect required, because research and science became more interdisciplinary. From single individual to multi-investigator, and then we moved into multi-institutional, because we also realized then you needed institutes with different competencies, different capabilities and capacities to come together to be able to address the scientific challenges. And then we moved into multi-agency. Today, if you see most of the programs that we have, they are funded by DBT, by DST, by CSIR, by ICMR, by ICAR, Atomic Energy, all come together. And we see the advantage of that collaboration that comes in. And of course, eventually, it was international collaboration which brought in. Now, today, as we are positioned, it's all about global collaborations. Why have we responded so quickly to COVID? And I'm so proud of our scientific community today, especially in our own country. Each scientist stood up to respond to the COVID challenge, because we had set up a very, very strong foundation. The foundation that we had set up was of this collaboration, working, bringing in the synergies between different groups. And this collaboration then quickly came to our advantage, and we could build on it to bring in our COVID responses that we are looking at. Now, this is going to be the new normal. You will have to work in collaborative manners. Single individuals will not be able to take ahead what the challenges are. Now, the biggest challenge for a collaborative effort is we are talking about social distancing, which now is really physical distancing that we talk about. How are you going to meet these global collaborative challenges with physical distancing? Virtual connectivities. We're all virtually connected today. You must be having about 100 people today connected in this webinar. We're all talking. But yes, it's a challenge. It's wonderful to see your colleagues sitting next to you. You shake hands, you talk, you converse with each other. Here we have to keep conversing with a screen. We have a computer screen before us and we keep talking to this screen. But I think this is really the new normal. We have to start accepting this new normal, but yes, saying that today globalization is the word and we have to accept it. Now, keeping this in mind, let's look at some wonderful examples that we've had, and our younger students who are in the webinar today, our younger researchers and scientists, this message is mainly for them. Every science that we've always been saying that, every science that we do, every science that a researcher does, at some point of time has an applied angle to it. You may be doing totally blue sky research, you may be doing absolutely basic research, but there is an application to it towards the end. And that application may not be when you are doing it. It is like a relay race. You pass on that knowledge to the next person picks up your knowledge and takes it ahead. So we are all talking about data sharing. I think sharing of data today becomes very, very important. And that has to be the new normal. Unless you share your data, you're not going to be able to achieve what you want. Data sharing, collaborations, but then it's also very important to see how do we then take this forward in terms of delivering results. If for COVID, if you've seen, today we are all talking about having a COVID vaccine ready in 12 months or 18 months. Could you ever even dream about it? Why? Because we've all built on platforms which were already there. It's a collaborative effort. We're talking about global accessibility to the vaccine that comes in. So I think this really is the new normal. I'm conscious of time and I'm conscious that I need to close this. And this is such a wonderful topic. It's such a wonderful audience. You could go on for hours and hours talking to all of you all. But I think the message which I would like to leave with all of you is things have changed. We are struck by a pandemic, but yes, nothing really has changed to the extent in which we wanted in terms of doing our science. Individuals have not changed. It's just that you see them through a computer screen. Technology is there. Technology helps you to connect. We need to take advantage of this, and India is very, very correctly positioned today to take advantage of this. Whether it is in terms of our collaborations, whether it's in terms of our new technology, whether it's in terms of our women in science, it gives them a huge opportunity today. Women in science, you can actually continue to work from home. And look, we kept talking about flexi timings. You don't have to convince anyone anymore that you need flexi timings. You have flexi timings available. So just remember, the opportunity is there. Keep the challenges on one side. Look at the opportunity and say, how do I seize this opportunity of being able to really achieve what I want? Good luck to all of you. I'm sure you people would be able to seize this opportunity. And as our Prime Minister has put out, we are looking at now becoming an Atmanirbhar Bharat, and that's only going to happen when each scientist commits to be able to deliver the scientific solutions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Jamil. Thank you, Dr. Mande and Atya. Thank you once again. And my apologies that I will sign off in another 5 minutes because I will need to leave at 2:25. Thank you so much, Atya.
Thank you, Dr. Renu, for your nice suggestions and defining the new norms. We were not prepared for this pandemic, but you know, this lockdown gave us the time to learn more about this virus and to prepare ourselves mentally, at least, to take these challenges. So this lockdown was wonderful stopgap period for us to understand. And also, I really got all your views written down, and we are really happy that you gave us the point of the new norms. You know, talking to screen and also data sharing and also for globalization and all. Thank you very much. So next we have on our panel Dr. Shekhar Mande, Director General CSIR, Secretary CSR, New Delhi. Dr. Shekhar Mande was also former director of the National Center for Cell Science in Pune and was also staff scientist in CDFD. He also served in various advisory capacities for the Government of India. He has been appointed as Director General for the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research and Secretary of the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, DSIR India, and he assumed the charge on 16th October. Dr. Mande has several honors and awards to his credit. He is the fellow of all the three major academies of India: the Indian National Science Academy, the National Academy of Science India, and the Indian Academy of Sciences. He received the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Biological Sciences. I am advised not to list out his achievements, honors, awards, so the speaker can have more time to present his work rather than to hear about his chronological achievements. So over to you, Dr. Shekhar Mande. I welcome you to present your talk. Dr. Shekhar? Hello?
Yes, sorry, I was mute as usual.
Oh, okay. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Renu Swarup, Dr. Kaisa Jamil, Dr. Tanya, Dr. Nageshwar Reddy, Dr. Rakesh Kumar, Atya, all the colleagues and friends. It's a great pleasure to be amongst all of you here. And basically, I was telling Atya that there is a very nice article which has come out in Science only today, and it talks about the gender issues and how things actually should be looked at from the science perspective. So today's Science, which is online on 19th June, it actually talks about understanding persistent gender gaps in STEM. And what actually I wanted to say, unfortunately Renu has said most of it, so I should acknowledge that fact that Renu really talked about all the point that what I wanted to say. But that also shows that Renu is such a fine model for everyone, you know. I mean, she's a great model for all the young aspiring women in the country. She has done so well, and we all look forward to her advice in many different fora and all. So, and many of those here on today's platform, I also see Gagandeep Kang here, and she also is a fantastic model for aspiring younger scientists, you know. So it's a great platform to be here. The Science article, Understanding Persistent Gender Gaps in STEM, essentially talks about two independent issues. It says that at least in the Western countries, it's not as true in India, that they have achieved the ratio of 1:1 in science, technology and engineering, most of the fields. However, if they look at some other disciplines such as physics, engineering and computer science, that is not as great, you know. And they say that, I mean, we basically seems to have reached some sort of a kind of a homeostasis in which we are not increasing the percentage of women in these areas, and it's a serious issue that we actually need to address it together. How are we going to do that? And it's an issue not only to be thought by women, but it also needs to be thought by men together, that how we actually together address this particular issue and make the environment more friendly for sufficient diversity in all the fields. You know, I mean, that's exactly what we would like to achieve in the coming years, is as much diversity in our workplaces as possible and respect places for each one of them, you know. So there's the kind of thing that we would like to see. Now, because the seminar is being addressed time of COVID, and as I said that Renu said almost everything that I wanted to say, I'll just add a few things about what CSIR has been doing about COVID. And in CSIR we actually started working on COVID sometimes in March itself, early March. That's just about the time when WHO was declaring it a global pandemic. and we came up with many different areas to work with, and broadly divided into 5 different verticals, which included things like surveillance, diagnosis, some of the methods, which intervention strategies, then the hospital assistive equipment, and supply chain modules. And on all the here and there, we have been able to cover some ground that in many of these that both men and women in CSIR, scientists, students, and all staff actually have contributed equally. So we're very proud of the fact that at least in CSIR, we are trying to make sure that the diversity of people is maintained, and we actually consciously don't discriminate against any person, let alone gender, in CSIR. And we would like to actually keep that up with the blessings from all of you. To talk about COVID, as Renu said, I can go on talking about it for next 1 hour, but I know that there are time constraints amongst all of you. We are also eager to hear Dr. Reddy and also Dr. Kang, both of whom are here. So what I will do is rather stop here, and once again thank NEERI, Dr. Rakesh Kumar, and Atya for organizing such a beautiful session today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shekhar Mande. That was very brief. And we came to know that CSIR has these 5 verticals on which you all are working. So on which I'm also CSIR person, so on which everyone is working. So I'm happy to know. And of course, Dr. Renu Swarup has covered so many things on COVID. And of course, you have added to what was missing and the activities which CSIR is going to take. Thank you so much. So now our next speaker will be Dr. Tonia. So to introduce Tonia, I would now like to invite Dr. Atya Kaple. I am proud to be her mother. After her PhD from University of Hyderabad, she joined NEERI Nagpur, and she's there from the same year, 1992, and continued her scientific journey till date as senior principal scientist. She has great academic achievements and is a member of OWST for the last 10 years. She's a renowned biotechnologist, and she has also had the privilege to interact with some distinguished national and international scientists and also Nobel laureates. She was awarded Young Scientist Award in the field of environmental microbiology, Women Scientist Award presented by the Biotech Research Society of India at Banaras Hindu University, and she's presently the head of the Director Research Cell CSIR-NEERI, and she's an expert in metagenomics and has many publications. I invite her to introduce Dr. Tonia to the audience. Dr. Atya.
Thank you.
My daughter.
For taking up the program. Tonia, welcome. I hope you can see. I would like to see you too. Yeah, great.
Hi.
Hi, Tonia.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Tonia.
Tonia is joining us from Trieste, Italy, and she's Tonia Blowers, the most dynamic coordinator of an organization which is OWSD, the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World. She's a PhD in Women and Gender Studies from the University of Warwick in UK, and she has really worked tirelessly to bring the least developed nations into the forefront and ensure that they get funding support. I have worked with her since I became Vice President 4 years ago, and have really seen her energy levels are boundless. She travels to the remotest of remote part of the world and motivates young ladies to follow their dreams, which is really something, you know. She takes great pleasure in connecting with women scientists across the world and listening to their stories. She says that she gains inspiration from the many women who show great resilience and determination despite facing so many challenges. The one most important decision that I really appreciate from her, she changed the name of this organization. It was called Third World blah blah something. And she said it doesn't look good. We need to change that name. And she made it Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World. So that was something that was really very much appreciated by all of us in the developing world. She believes in this organization and she says that we can really bring about the much needed change in women's life. And she has been working for this for now so many years, since I think 2013 she's been the coordinator of OST. So she will share her goals and achievements. So Dr. Tonia, please.
Thank you, Atya. Thank you for that very, very wonderful introduction. Although I can't take credit for changing the name of the organization, I'm afraid. It was already called OST when I arrived, but I'm very glad it was called OST and not TWOS. So thank you so much for inviting me to talk. It's a great privilege to be among such prestigious scientists and representatives from India. I have actually got a couple, kind of two different PowerPoints, because Atya said she'd like me to say something briefly about the organization so that you understand a little bit about where we're coming from, and then also talk something about the new normal of COVID that we're experiencing. So is that okay, Atya? How much time do I have?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
But you know, Dr. Mande took so little time, you can take his.
Well, please stop me at any point. And of course, the new normal for us now is these kinds of presentations, right? We're all seeing now, each of us on the screen, and we've all got different configurations of people in our in our views, and we're all becoming quite adept at technology. And in many ways, I think it's working better for us than it was before, because we've had to really up our game and understand how to manage these kinds of meetings. And I do have the possibility of sharing my screen with you, my presentation, so we can see how that works. Let's start off. Sorry. Okay. Are you seeing? Do you see my screen? Let me go to.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect. So.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, there we are.
Yeah.
Isn't technology wonderful? So,
Yeah.
just to take you through then briefly what the organization is all about. Here you can see I visited your wonderful institute at NEERI in October 2018, where Atya had organized a wonderful conference, and where we went on actually to have our executive board meeting, which we have every 4 years. Here, this was a wonderful introduction from some young women at the institute. Just briefly to remind you then what the context is of women working in science. The average worldwide is 29% of women researchers. This is not just in science, this is in all disciplines. In science it's lower, and in many countries in the world it's much lower than this. So for example, in Nepal it's only at 7%. In Chad it's 9%. So these are global averages, but even the average itself is very low. And if you look closely at where India is on this scale, I don't know if you can see. Sorry, I've got my. I just moved Professor Jamil down there. Here, India, 13.9% of women researchers in India. The last time this was updated in 2019, and maybe not all of the data has been collated. But you can see that there's quite a lot of work to do. Myanmar, surprisingly, which is the least developed country in Asia, as you know, 85.5% of women researchers. However, we have to look carefully what these statistics mean, and actually the status of researchers in Myanmar is quite low, so it doesn't necessarily reflect status and privilege. Sorry, I'm trying to move through. Many of you will have seen this classic scissors diagram, which represents what happens to women in the career journey, academic career journey. They come in, the blue line there shows more women entering as undergraduate students than men, but as you go through your career, gaining more experience, more influence, and importantly more pay for your work, the number of women drops off. And there are different places where it's likely that women will drop out. One is at postgraduate level, and then at postdoc level, and ultimately coming in as professors. There are very, very few women in tenured positions in universities around the world. So what does that mean? It means that traditionally we come from a situation where this is what a laboratory used to look like. Lots of men in coats working on their issues, their problems, finding solutions. Because of this reality, I don't know if you recognize this man, is Abdus Salam from Pakistan, who went on to win a Nobel laureate in physics. He was an outstanding scientist in his country. He went on to study at the University of Cambridge in England, and he felt very strongly that it was unfair that people like him. He went back to Pakistan. He tried to continue working in Pakistan. But there is a sense of isolation. There are not enough researchers around at that level for him to collaborate with. There weren't the resources. So he made it his life's work to try and provide a space, a physical space, but also very importantly an intellectual space for scientists from the developing world to come to a space where they could take a break from their teaching and administrative duties and kind of top up their academic skills. And that place, very fortunately for me, happens to be in Trieste in Italy. And he established the International Center for Theoretical Physics, which I don't know if you know of that organization, but it's really quite an amazing institution. And there are over 65 conferences organized every year there for scientists from the developing world, and over 6,000 scientists come through the doors in and out. Obviously, right now, unfortunately, the new normal for ICTP is we do not have visitors right now, and so trying to organize some alternative programs. Abdus Salam also identified there weren't enough women scientists, and he organized a conference way back in 1987 in Trieste, inviting women scientists, and from that seed, what was then called the World Organization of Science, the Third World Organization for Women in Science, was born. OSD. Right, so the ways in which OSD tries to help increase the number of women researchers are through four main pillars: community, mobility, stability, and visibility. The community aspect is hugely important. We have members are women scientists with at least a master's or a PhD in science subjects from developing countries. We've just done a very big data update so that we only have what we call live and active members on board, and we are now with 5,328 members. I think we have 276 members based in India, thanks to the hard work of Professor Jamil and Atya. You can see that a quarter of our members are in Asia, and the idea of the chapters is really, as you can see through the work that's being done here, is to bring together women scientists to discuss their challenges, to think about some solutions, but also to demonstrate that women scientists are doing amazing work and they should be recognized and seen. We host lots of information about the national chapters on our main website. Here you can see we had a special news article on actually on CSIR-NEERI, which Atia Kapli wrote for us. We can see that we had a news item about the executive board convening in New Delhi. And just to give you an example of this, this article where Atia went through and described all of the wonderful activities that you're actually doing specifically around COVID-19. Our national chapters are often launched by prestigious people. This is the Minister for Gender of Rwanda, who is cutting the launch cake with our President, Jennifer Thompson from South Africa. And these are the kinds of activities that national chapters are undertaking around the world. Here in Sudan, you can see they had this wonderful idea of sending all of their members around to universities and advocating that they could become OAS members, telling them about all of the different scholarships and awards they have possible. Mobility, this is the notion that unfortunately many of the countries that we serve, they don't have the infrastructure in science to provide the resources and the background that's needed in order to get an excellent scientific reputation. And so at some point, scientists from these countries need to leave the country and get extra support. So we provide a fellowship, a PhD fellowship, for women from least developed countries. We have over 280 graduates from that program, and those graduates come from 66 eligible countries, which if you just look very briefly, you can see in Asia that they are least developed countries or under-resourced scientifically. And hopefully, and we would love to ask you this, we would love more of our Asia and Pacific fellows to go to remind me later, to go to India and to come to your institute as fellows. So maybe that's something we can pick up later. A third pillar is stability. So once you've gone abroad and you've got the extra resources, many women would love to come home, and they would love to be able to do their science in their own countries and build up capacity. That's not often possible. We've introduced a fantastic grant, very prestigious, up to $50,000, again to women from the eligible countries that we mentioned. They can build up laboratories, they can get equipment, they can get MSc students. Sometimes they need assistance with childcare or leadership training skills, how to manage a team. We run workshops with them, and importantly, they are shown how to link with industry. This is a workshop that was held in Trieste a couple of years ago. Final pillar of the program is visibility. So as I said, how important it is to have role models who are women scientists, as already your director has gestured to all the wonderful women on the panel here today who are fantastic role models. It's not working. We have a wonderful award, a prize scheme for women from these eligible countries. We select 5 women each year, and they go on to get their award at the American Association for Advancement in Science ceremony. So they're seen by 3,000 participants at international level, and as a result of that kind of exposure, they get many offers of international collaboration, and their careers really rocket after this experience. And here we can just, in terms of visibility, we're continually putting things on our website to try and highlight all of the activities that are going on. This was during our 25th anniversary celebrations. We asked for video contributions from women scientists from around the world, and you can just click and hear them. That's just one example, small example. So that's the introduction to OAS for you. Ati, I don't know if you want to say anything at this point, and then I can move on and talk about the COVID realities.
You please carry on.
Okay, fine. I think many of the things that I'll say now you've already mentioned, but this is kind of looking like the new normal, right, for many of us now, including the ergonomic disaster that is sitting on the floor with your laptop. But for women, the new normal of working at home, for many of us, it's really a double or even a triple burden, as we are the main caregivers. And in this context, certainly in Europe, and I'd love to hear from you in India what the situation is, but there's homeschooling going on here in Italy, but the burden of homeschooling, of course, is now taken on by women who are also trying to get on with their own research and get on with their own work. It's extraordinarily difficult. Many of us will have had important Skype meetings with babies on laps or children wandering in at different times. Of course, in that kind of environment, it's particularly difficult to do research that requires concentration. And there is a lot of evidence to suggest that women's publication levels is really decreasing during lockdown. And not just that, but also women's applications for new funding, so going into the future. So at a moment when normally they would be writing long and involved and complex applications to get more funding to secure their work and their research going forward, they don't have the time or the focus to do that right now, and that's going to have a big knock-on effect. On the positive side, though, as people have already suggested, how wonderful would it be if we could be much, much more flexible, if the hours that we put in could be flexible, and, just the reality of being carers, of having to take full responsibility for the food, the education, and the health of members of our family, that could be prioritized and ways found to adapt. So that is a very positive possibility that is coming out of this situation. Although in the short term, I think it's extremely challenging. We've done surveys with our members, and the feedback has been that it's actually really, really difficult. And they've been asking for extensions to their scholarships. And we've been, as an organization that really wants to focus on specific needs of women, we have been very open to all of those kinds of requests, and we've tried to make the situation as easy as possible. Here you see a young woman dressed in what's, the PPE, protection equipment that is essential to protect frontline workers in hospitals and also in old people's homes. Women, as you know, tend to be on the front line, a high percentage of women on the front line, not just in hospitals, but also, again, I'd like to hear your feedback in India, but particularly in Italy and the UK, where I'm from right now, as supermarket cashiers. Now, these are essential workers during this time. However, because we work in a world designed for men and by men, typically, even things like PPE equipment are not necessarily appropriate for women. They're not the right size. They're made to an average male size. They're not the right shape. And also importantly, they're not adaptable. So, for example, a woman who's menstruating may need to take that suit off many times. And, if women had been involved in the design process, that might have been taken into account. And of course, these are life and death issues as well. It's not trivial. It's not just simply a design issue. It's actually about, are we protecting all the members of a society who are on the front line? Are we taking into account all the different variables? The third thing I wanted to say about the new normal is that, particularly in India, as you know, a very, very high percentage of women working in agriculture. And it's these kinds of jobs, first of all, that are so crucially important for food security, for supplying and feeding the nation. At the same time, many of the jobs that women are predominantly working in are very, very precarious, and they will be the first ones to go during this economic crisis. So no insurance, daily wages instead of a contract and an income. These farmers who are actually providing food for their families, if the food doesn't come in, then they don't eat. And just some numbers here that I've taken from the WHO International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge. 78% of India's women are involved in agriculture. 70% of farm work is led by women. 50% of rural women are agricultural labourers, and 60% of world food volume in general is grown by women. And we know, for example, that during lockdown, it's impossible to get to market. It's impossible to buy seeds. Many things are made extremely challenging during this period, with no kind of, often without the governmental support that is needed. And how has OST specifically been responding to the pandemic? So we, from the very beginning, as you know, Italy was one of the first countries to be locked down. We, very, very alarming state of affairs here, but we very soon managed to start working from home and made a decision that it was important to highlight and focus why women scientists from the developing world were so crucial. Their input and results right now are so crucial to the evolving pandemic. And so we did a couple of surveys. We specifically asked people for their input, and we got women from developing countries from all over the world to tell us their stories. What are they doing in the pandemic? Some of the stories were about how their research is already well aligned to finding solutions, to maybe helping find a vaccine, or understanding how the virus works, or looking at the genomic construction. So those who are doing directly relevant research. But then there were many other women that we talked to and who told their stories, who are adapting their research. So maybe they're working on banana viruses and seeing if any knowledge they can bring can be helpful, or maybe they're making their laboratories available for other scientists to come into. So lots and lots of adaptations. We hope to really show and make visible the incredibly important contributions that women scientists are making to the pandemic solutions. Here we have one of our stories in this wonderful document that you can find on our website from Jyoti Sharma in India. Some of you may know, a senior scientist in the International Bilateral Cooperation Division of DST. And she details here how national programs and kind of joined up thinking are so important for resolving the pandemic. And I recommend going on the website and reading this. I can send you the links. And just to finish then, briefly, try to underline why women's contribution is important in general to science, but then specifically to the pandemic. You probably understand why I've got this photo here of this is kind of a cardiac arrest, and it's well known now that the symptoms that have been distributed around the world for a heart attack actually were very much referring to men having heart attacks. And the reason for disseminating the information was that people would recognize it immediately when they were suffering a heart attack, and they'd get themselves off to hospital, and the worst would be prevented, deaths would be prevented. However, the symptoms for heart attack for women are quite different, and so they weren't recognizing their symptoms. They weren't going to their doctors, and they weren't certainly taking themselves off to emergency rooms. There is a sense, and there is a lot of evidence to show that when women are doing science, and this is true for any groups that are not generally represented in scientists category, they will identify problems that are relevant to their own experience, because we actually are not able to think about experience outside our own experience. So we will find, if we're experiencing certain diseases more than men, we will highlight those diseases. We want to find solutions. Importantly, women are many times the implementers of scientific solutions, and if we're not consulted in the design process, the implementation may not happen. A classic example of this is, for example, in India, I think there was a development program to improve the water situation in a village where women were walking great distances to pick up their water, and so the development agency considered that they would build a well in the center of the village so that the women no longer had to go and pick up water from such a distance. And of course, the women weren't consulted. They didn't want to use the well. They wanted to continue going to the village. And finally, just to end... Yes, sorry. Am I over time?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say the final point I'd like to make is that we're now moving into the fourth industrial revolution, where artificial intelligence is of huge importance, and women are not being included in artificial intelligence research right now, and the consequences of that could be very, very important. So, for example, here we have a robot doing the housework. Now, you may think this is a neutral robot, but if we choose to give that robot a female voice or a female form, we will interact with that robot as a female, and we will also start reproducing the well-known stereotypical treatment that is so often apparent. This will be important also moving forward with pandemic solutions too. Sorry if I've overrun. I can finish now.
Yeah.
And I can take my screen off.
Thank you, Tonia, for your wonderful sneak preview about OWSD and also about telling us about the highest mortality today and due to the COVID pandemic and the alarming situation and the women scientists' contribution to mitigate the pandemic. So now let us move on to our next speaker. Yeah, Akshay, you want to say something?
Hello, can I just interrupt?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, Tonia, thank you really very much for that wonderful information. I am just interrupting out of turn. I just wanted to say that your descriptions have made such an impact, especially about the protective gear equipment. I just got a message from our DG saying that we need to take one of our labs in CSR in Bangalore. They make this protective gear. So he has just texted that we need to contact them right away to change the design. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you,
Tonia, for bringing it in front, bringing out that problem.
Thank you. That's really wonderful.
Back now.
So we now move on to our next speakers, who is Dr. Rakesh Kumar, Director, CSIR-NEERI. He assumed his charge as Director of CSIR National Environmental Engineering Research Institute on 23rd May 2016. He was the Chief Scientist and Head of CSIR-NEERI Mumbai Zonal Center. He has promoted CSIR-NEERI into one of the best labs in the country with his outstanding contributions in environmental science and engineering, which won him several awards: Commonwealth Commission Award UK, Environmental Leadership Award by US, Asia Environmental Partnership, and USAID. He has been given an award for the largest number of technology transfers for low-cost wastewater treatment, Fitzroy, and was given Vasvik Award also. And recently, Hiyoshi Think Ecology Award for his work on the use of ecology in solving environmental engineering problems. He has also served as an adjunct professor at the Center for Environmental Sciences and Engineering at IIT Bombay. We thank him immensely for his support to our organization OWSD and for the national chapter and for hosting this important meeting. Over to you, Dr. Rakesh Kumar.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving such large, longer introduction. Here, General Dr. Mande, Dr. Padma Bhushan, Dr. Nageshwar Reddy ji, Dr. Renusuru, who just left, all my colleagues, and many of colleagues who joined from different parts of the world. It's always amazing to get into OWST meeting, and I had the first chance of speaking at one of the events where I was asked to speak, and first question which I also asked was, "I'm a man speaking in a woman thing. Is it right thing to do?" Of course, and since then I see a lot of change. So my first memory goes to this gender-related issue when we hosted in Mumbai when the Science Congress was hosted. One of the professors from TISS was also called for one of the special sessions that I had hosted it, and she was wearing sari and she was struggling to connect her collar mic. And the first thing which she made that statement was, even the collar mic has not been thinking, all the manufacturers have not been thinking about how to design for women. So that's the kind of sensitivity we are now developing, and which is a good sign. Following the footstep of Dr. Tonia, I have also made 4 or 5 slides. In the limited time that I have, I'll like to share, and scientists are more comfortable sharing slides, so just bear with me. What I've done is just few points that I thought I should share. When we talk about women or children, actually come again together. We can't be thinking of these things differently. And when we're looking at these pointers, whether it's pandemic or post-pandemic or without that, the current situation is that there has been huge interruption in educational system, and all these educational systems have seen that women folk or the girl child is getting much more impacted than the normal male child. Exploitation in child labor is something which is commonly known earlier, but it is going to become much more because the moment poverty level rises, the children are going to be used for labor purposes. And last two things which is impacting directly, indirectly is health services and economic well-being. Some of the very interesting aspect that comes from India is that most hazardous job that is being dealt with right now, all the frontline health workers, particularly the ASHA workers, they are the women folks who are going to survey house to house, finding out who is suffering from any fever, cough, cold, and they are in direct contact with COVID related symptoms, person here and there. The other one, of course, nursing staff, 90% are women, and scavenging, cleaning is another set which is there. These three sets that I highlighted is mainly because while we talk about gender equality, we mostly get into all the areas where we are well read. We have graduate, postgraduate, and PhDs, and we are not being given enough importance. But when we come on the lower side as well, we find that there is a lot of disparity. The current data actually shows that when we are in the current this 3.5 months time, 67% of workers have lost job, and women and low-key jobs have actually suffered the most during this period. Some of the other numbers which came from our different institution in country, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, which says that employment in April 2020 was 70% of average in the preceding year. In May, actually, it has gone down further. But when it is being discussed that how do we re-employ them, it is estimated that the men are having edge of about 17 to 18% more chances of getting employed, and that's where the crux of the whole issue is. And I'll come to the point what is that we need to do at the end of my talk. Besides that, we also have some of these numbers which have come now, that 220 million women employed in sectors that are potentially vulnerable as of now. And of 44 million workers, vulnerable sectors globally, 31 million women are facing potential job cuts compared to 13 for the men. What are the possible engagement that we can think of? And that's where participation of everyone comes in. The education continuity and participation is key thing that we don't need to miss. While creating jobs and some funds which government of any government, national government would be wanting to give, the priority should also be going here. Because if we miss this chance, the whole generation is going to suffer. Community engagement with respect to the local community and the community which is far off. We know within India also we have a lot of migratory population, which was a big revelation this time when the pandemic hit. That people have moved from different parts of the country, different states, and they're not engaged. The local community is not even aware that these people are from different places. The last one, which is looking very critical, is that when such things happen, water, sanitation, and hygiene techs have been hit. And these are the sectors where we have to engage much more, because if we have to bring that well-being and health, these three things are very, very important and I would say essential as a people. So what are the post-pandemic promises and promises that we need to take? We know that this is going to have lasting social and economic changes. Policymakers design recovery efforts with gender equality in mind. So every decision that we take today, whether it's our finance minister or prime minister or any country's finance minister or the justice minister is taking decision, if they are taking into account gender equality in each of the decisions, we will do a great job. If employers allow for more flexible and predictable remote working situation, that women can possibly be allowed more work from home. I'm not saying it's not possible for men, but this is something which can be thought of. If the future design of system and technology are gender neutral, I had not seen the slides of I had not seen Dr. Antonio's slides earlier, but what we also realize very clearly is that the technology and the system that is being designed right now needs to be much more gender neutral. And I gave you an example of collar mic, and the PP is also an example of that. And of course, if fathers can pick up child care and housework much more than what they're doing right now. And of course, the last one, which is very important for me, which I keep saying, all the women that I know and everyone else, that women need to also support themselves as a community. We find that many times women also don't support other women, and that community support of the similar gender and of course the opposite gender is equally important. Of course, there are lot of ifs and buts on this, but it's important that when we are doing all of these above whatever I have listed, we need to bring each so that we create a more level playing field in the society. Science and engineering is one of those areas where women have to play a much bigger role, and I think at least in our institute, and I'm glad to mention here, when Dr. Mande took charge, the first thing that he did was gender-related audit to find out how many women are there in CSIR. So that's a great beginning, and we are hoping that India will take much more stronger steps to bringing gender equality. So thank you very much, and I hope I am within the time.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh Kumar. You touched upon the most important topic of today, that is impact on women and children. And you also dwelt on the possibilities, measures with facts and figures. And you have really pointed out that in science and engineering, women have to take more leads and play a bigger role. It was a wonderful message for all of us. And thank you very much for your wonderful inputs. Now we proceed to invite Dr. Gagandeep Kang, Executive Director of Translational Health Science and Technology Institute of DBT at Faridabad. A little bit of her introduction. She has made history by becoming the first Indian woman to be selected as a Fellow of the Royal Society of London. Dr. Gagandeep Kang, also known as India's vaccine godmother, along with the other Indian Royal Fellows, she has joined the likes of Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Albert Einstein to be elected in this oldest scientific academy of London. Dr. Kang is a leading scientist in India. She has developed an oral vaccine against rotavirus, which kills almost 1 lakh children in India. The vaccine developed by her was first identified in 1985 by researchers at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi, and then from then on, over $100 million funding from the Government of India and also from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is now a part of India-approved vaccine. She continued to be an active researcher. Kang has established laboratories to support vaccine trials and also to conduct phase 1 and phase 3 clinical trials on vaccines, and has an approach to support 2 WHO pre-qualified vaccines made by 2 Indian companies. She would also like to give women some encouragement by participating and by advising them not to give up. They must take up big problems and challenges and never give up. So Kang serves on the editorial boards of numerous journals and has over 300 scientific publications. She chairs the WHO CSIR Regional Immunization Technical Advisory Group since 2015, and she has been awarded the Infosys Prize Award. So with all her achievements, I like to invite now Dr. Gagandeep Kang to present her views on today's topic. Over to you.
Yeah, one second. Rakesh sir, your screen is still shared.
Yeah, the screen has not gone.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Gagandeep, would you like me to share your slides from here?
No, thank you, Atya. I can share them from here. If there's a problem, we can sort it out. So can you see my slides now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So thank you very much. It's nice to come after everybody who had anything to say about women in science has pretty much said it all. So I thought what I would do is talk to you about some of the work that we've been doing and some of the work that we are planning to do. So you heard that, and with that very, very generous introduction, you heard about the work that we've done with vaccines. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that I've also worked on environmental issues, particularly water and sanitation, for the last 25 years. And the topic that I've chosen to talk to you about today is really what is it that we can do with environmental monitoring of SARS-CoV-2. This is relevant to today's discussion because if you think about what the new normal is going to be, I think having indirect tools for surveillance is going to be an approach that we will need to continue to use. So we do have some experience of doing environmental surveillance. More often, and the stage that we are at right now in India for SARS-CoV-2 is to look at human case surveillance, which means we pick up one case at a time and then try to make a diagnosis. The advantages of environmental surveillance is that it allows us to monitor large groups of individuals, and it allows us to do this in a timely fashion. And if we do it right, we can get information on a much larger scale, much more easily than going from person to person to be able to get samples and make a diagnosis. These are approaches that have begun to be used in other parts of the world. And I think one thing that is important to emphasize in this area is that what surveillance allows you to do is when you look at the environment, you're defining exactly where the interventions need to be applied. So people travel, but the environment is fixed. It changes only in terms of what happens over various seasons. But the geography is known and the points of intervention are known. So that makes the application of control measures a lot simpler. Now, if you look at what we are thinking about for SARS-CoV-2, it's something that we have learned from environmental surveillance for other diseases. we've learned that environmental surveillance can be an early warning system for impending public health emergencies. We learned this from polio, and this has been demonstrated now in studies in Europe, where it's been shown that you can detect SARS-CoV-2 in the environment before you start to see it in people. It also helps us to understand the epidemiology of infectious diseases, particularly transmission. And then if you monitor the environment, you get a composite signal of whether the interventions that we are using are effective or not. None of these studies are particularly easy to do. They are very hard to set up. But if we get our methods right, they can be incredibly valuable as public health tools. Now, if you look here, this is an example of polio surveillance. And environmental surveillance for polio really started only in about the last decade and a half. If you look at the top graph, that is 2010, when we had wild polio virus still in India. And you can see from the red boxes that we were able to detect the virus in Mumbai and in Delhi. The last case of polio was seen in India in early 2011. And you can see from 2011 onwards, there are absolutely no red boxes anymore. What environmental surveillance allows you to do for polio is it allows you to detect cases that you might not be able to see otherwise. And here in the orange and yellow boxes, what you're seeing is type 1 and type 2 vaccine-derived polioviruses. When you have a vaccine-derived poliovirus, that tells you, if you haven't found it as a clinical case from acute flaccid paralysis surveillance, you need to be going back into the community from where these environmental surveillance samples come and identifying those cases. This is something that the polio program has done very, very effectively, and it has become a key tool in allowing us to control polio. Not just in terms of, so how do you know where to go? You have to look at the sewage system and decide where your sampling sites need to be located. You have to select the sampling site appropriately and look at the size of the population that you need to screen, and look at whether it is possible for you to monitor more people with fewer samples while balancing sensitivity. So the idea of poliovirus surveillance is to pick sites carefully so that you understand where sewage is coming from, whose human fecal material will you be sampling if you pick a certain site. Now, it isn't just polio that is used. Studies from CSIR institutes have also done environmental surveillance for other pathogens as well, and this is work that was done to look at Salmonella typhi at the time of the Mahakumbh Mela. And what this study essentially showed was that after a lot of people went into the river, there was a huge increase in the amount of Salmonella typhi that could be detected in the water and the sediment. So environmental surveillance approaches have been widely used. What you have to do is consider whether the pathogen is actually present in the gut or not, and that will allow you to decide whether sewage sampling or wastewater sampling is appropriate. We know that in the case of SARS-CoV-2, viral RNA is found in the feces of infected individuals, which means that we will be able to find it in wastewater and in sewage. So there have been studies that have now been done in many parts of the world, particularly Australia, North America, and Europe, and more recently in India. These have been based on the fact that SARS-CoV-2 is found in the stool of 19 to 100% of infected individuals, depending on the study, It's shed for 3 to 4 weeks. You have a very high viral load, and it's been found that you can detect SARS-CoV-2 in wastewater 2 weeks before your cases start to appear in the hospitals. So it serves as an early warning system, and it also allows you to estimate quite accurately the number of infected individuals that are present in the catchment area. Now, can we take the methods that are applied in the rest of the world and apply them directly to India? Well, our waste disposal systems are not always sewered. 20% of our population practice open defecation. Septic tanks are variably emptied. Flow rates for us vary with the seasons, and the amount of wastewater that we have in many of our drains is insufficient for many of the methods that have been applied in the West, particularly the ones that use concentration techniques. In addition to that, depending on method, recovery efficiencies can vary, and PCR inhibition with Indian sewage is a very, very special problem that it took years of work for us to be able to overcome. So if we think about the challenges for doing this kind of approach in India, it is the lack of an optimized and standardized protocol. From IIT Gandhinagar, Manish Kumar has been doing a fair amount with his Swedish collaborators to establish such a protocol. There is work that is being undertaken, I believe, by ICMR and the National Polio Program, as well as in Chennai with the Anna University. But what is it that we would want to look for from this? We would like to be able to develop a quantitative microbial risk assessment, which requires for us to have an understanding of dose response. We would also like to look at what the potential role of wastewater is for two things. One is to document community transmission, as has been done in the West. But the second is also to study what risk comes to us from this wastewater. So what is it that we would need to do to be able to decrease that risk? There are a number of approaches that are traditional approaches that use molecular biology, but Atya is also thinking about more innovative approaches of using metagenomics for wastewater sampling. And I think one of the things that we should be thinking about is, in this new era, what is it that we can all do together to come up with answers that will benefit all of us? Wastewater epidemiology could be one of those very useful tools for community monitoring that we could be thinking about. The need, of course, is clear and urgent when what is required, and what I think will happen is that we will need to work together to address this need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gagandeep Kang. You have given us new ideas, not just from the molecular biology point of view, but looking at environmental surveillance and where to look for these COVID viruses, the SARS-CoV in wastewaters, which many people have ignored this aspect of. And it's very important information that we can detect it 2 weeks before the people come to the hospital. That was amazing discovery for us. And also the community transmission, which you said is very important to look at, and the risks which come through this surveillance. So you have given us the idea that wastewater epidemiology is now one of the hot topics of research to be taken up. And who else but Atya is the right person to go ahead with this, to collaborate with you on these. And thank you very much. And now I would like to call upon the next speaker, I like to, the next speaker will be the next. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the next speaker will be Padma Bhushan Dr. Nageshwar Reddy from the Asian Institute of Gastroenterology, Hyderabad. I don't know, the voice is bouncing back. So for this, I like to invite Professor Jyoti to introduce Padma Bhushan Dr. Nageshwar Reddy. And actually, Dr. Jyoti, who will be introducing you to him, is a very active member of National Chapter of India OWSD host, and she has been the former director and emeritus professor of the Institute of Genetics and Hospital for Genetic Diseases of Osmania University, Begumpet. She is also a fellow of the AP Academy of Sciences, and she has also other honors to her credit. And she has been serving her institute for 19 years and is continuing as emeritus professor in that institute. Her areas of research include medical genetics, cytogenetics, molecular genetics, everything related to genetics. She has guided 12 students and several MPhil and postdoctoral research fellows, and she has published 181 research articles in national and international journals. And the list of honors and awards is very lengthy, so I will brief it here and invite Jyoti to introduce you, Dr. Nageshwar Reddy, who's the Padma Bhushan awardee. Dr. Jyoti, over to you.
Thank you, madam. I'm honored to introduce our invited speaker, the renowned clinician, Padma Bhushan Dr. D. Nageshwar Reddy, who is the chairman of Asian Institute of Gastroenterology and past president of World Endoscopy Organization. Dr. Reddy served as professor of gastroenterology in Andhra Pradesh Health Sciences and later established Asian Institute of Gastroenterology, which is recognized as the center of excellence.
Somehow the voice is not clear. Somehow, I think.
Voice is not clear?
Yeah.
Is it okay, ma'am?
Yeah, Dr. Jyoti's is okay. Everybody else can please keep it on mute so that we don't have a problem. Dr. Jyoti, we can hear you. Please continue.
Yeah. This area of research interest has been in gastrointestinal endoscopy, particularly in therapeutic pancreatic biliary endoscopy and innovations in transgenic endoscopic surgery. He has published over 500 research papers in national and international peer-reviewed journals. He has contributed several chapters in international textbooks of gastroenterology and edited textbooks of GI endoscopy. He is on the editorial board of several reputed international journals. He has been a visiting faculty for over 200 international endoscopy workshops. He has been recognized for his achievements by several societies. He is an elected member of American Society of GI Endoscopy, Fellow of National Academy of Sciences, Fellow of Philippine Society of Gastroenterology, Fellow of Royal College of Physicians of Ireland, and many more. He has given several orations which include the Francisco Roman Oration in Philippines, Dr. Pannirselvam Memorial Oration in Malaysia, Keith Hubrick's Oration in Los Angeles, USA, Peter Gillespie Oration in Australia, and Sir Francis Avery Jones Professorship in St. Mark's, London. He received the highest award of Master of Gastroenterology from World Gastroenterology Organization and B.C. Roy Award from Indian Medical. He also received honorary fellowships and lifetime memberships from Hong Kong, Singapore, Indonesia, Colombia, and various societies of gastroenterology. He also received prestigious national awards from Government of India, the Padma Shri Award in 2002 and Padma Bhushan Award in 2016 for his outstanding contributions and rendering yeoman service to the society. Friends, please join me in welcoming Dr. Nageshwar Reddy to share his perspective on COVID realities. Over to Dr. Reddy.
Thank you very much, Professor Jyoti. I'd like to start by thanking the OWST and NCI for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this very distinguished panel here this afternoon. If I can get my slides on, I think I'll share my slides so that. Yeah, I think you can see my slides now.
No,
Dr.
sir.
Jamil? Jamil, is my slides on now for you?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
see. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, we can see. Yeah.
yeah, so I am a gastroenterologist who's actually managing a large hospital here in Hyderabad, a 1,000-bedded hospital. So what I'm going to talk on is my perspectives as a practicing doctor and what this dealing with new normal means to us. And this is, I think, a little different from what has already been talked about. Mine is going to be more a clinical talk. Now, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so for us doctors, there's been a dramatic change with the new pandemic. In fact, this is how our hospital OPD used to look before the pandemic started, and this is how it looks now afterwards. So there's a huge difference. And what do you mean by this new normal? Before we go into that, I just like to outline what I'm going to talk on. I'm going to give a very short presentation on the present knowledge, go down, of course, next to the lockdown, what happened after the lockdown, and what's the new normal with this. My definition of new normal is right now to when the vaccine is going to come. Till that time, I think we have to behave quite differently. And of course, we hope this will be in months, but nobody knows when it's going to come. But there is another important fact that I want to emphasize is that what Professor Renu Sarup and Professor Shekhar Mande have already talked about, that even afterwards, even after the vaccine comes, what has been established now, among scientists at least, is that we realize that sharing information, doing multi-institutional studies and putting out this information very fast should be the new normal in science, that we should change from our old ways of going very slowly on different things. So this is, of course, the new normal. Over the period of time, in fact, in January, the first genomic sequence of this virus was first given to us by the Chinese scientists, and since then, a huge amount of knowledge has come in. We now know how this virus gets into our body, usually from ACE2 receptors in the respiratory tract, of course, and then goes inside, and what all it does. All this knowledge has come very rapidly. And we also know that clinically, what we thought initially that this was a pulmonary virus causing symptoms of cough, fever, and so on, could occur in variety of other ways. In 1/3 of the patients actually come with gastrointestinal symptoms like diarrhea, and these patients don't do very well. Some of them come with strokes, neurological problems, and more importantly, a significant percentage of them, some of who are very young, come with cardiac problems in form of myocarditis and sudden death. So this clinical spectrum we now know is extremely wide. And of course, in addition to this, we know over this period that treatment has been quite disappointing. I don't want to go into the controversies of what happened with hydroxychloroquine, but recently the WHO initially said we should use, then said not to because of the Lancet paper withdrawal, and now again has withdrawn hydroxychloroquine from the solidarity trial, which are including variety of other drugs. Remdesivir is an antiviral agent, which like other antiviral agent has been used in this situation. Unfortunately, all it did was to actually decrease the time duration of the disease. We still don't have very strong evidence to suggest that it actually decreases mortality. The only drug which seems to decrease mortality is dexamethasone, a recent study which is still not published from Oxford, showing that using this in patients who are very severely infected, who are actually have this cytokine storm, are going to respond in terms of decreasing mortality. And there's been, of course, several conflicting reports on convalescent plasma. So all this actually shows that we still haven't achieved what is optimum for treatment in these cases. It's important to remember that this is an RNA virus, and evolving treatments for RNA virus can sometimes be very long. For example, we have seen that for hepatitis C, it took almost 30 years to get a definitive treatment. Similarly, for HIV, we still don't have a 100% definitive treatment. So this is not going to be so easy, and that's why the concentration of the vaccine, and hopefully, I think our Indian contribution for this is going to be quite good. But this is the current situation as of today. You know that not only in India the cases are increasing, but we have reached a situation where we're adding about 13,000 cases every day. But the important thing to notice on the top is that the fatality rates are less, 3.3%, with a good recovery rate. So although it looks like we are getting a huge number of cases, fortunately for us, the people dying from this disease is not so large as one would have seen it in other countries. And this is extremely important to remember, because all of us are stuck in our houses watching television, looking at what's happening in Italy, Spain or US, bothered about the deaths that are occurring. What is important to remember is that the fatality rate in India, in fact, the so-called case fatality rates is only about 3.5%. But more important than case fatality rate is true mortality. That is the number of deaths that occurs in all patients who are infected. What you must remember is that the number of reported infections are much lower than what is happening in the community. So the true mortality rate of number of deaths that occur in, for example, a million population in India is only about 7 or 8, much less than what is happening in West, which is 500 to 600 per million. So therefore, I think this is important, that our very low mortality rate. This could be attributed to several reasons. The age, for example, many of our patients are below the age of 65 years. The fact that we have a large rural population dispersed and therefore spread is not so much. Less comorbid conditions like diabetes, hypertension, and of course, a sense that we have an innate immunity which is different from others and therefore probably better prepared. There are many other reasons. A lot of exciting work is going on in our country on what these other situations are, which is actually decreasing this mortality. I won't have time to go into this, but this is, I think that's the reason why we are not so worried about mortality. In March, the first disease in our country came in January. In early March, I think the understanding in the government was that the disease was coming in huge waves, and by late March, the lockdowns came in. We had 3 lockdowns, and there have been several benefits of the lockdown. Again, I don't want to go into the debate of economic versus health benefits of lockdown, but generally what happened in the medical field is because of this lockdown, we had this chance for capacity building, putting in more beds in the hospital, trying to get more ventilators, understanding what these patients come with. But more important, we've understood this disease during this 2 months period. The pathogenesis, how it actually is causing this morbidity and mortality, the fact that in addition to the respiratory problem, it's actually the extensive thrombosis that occurs in the vessels, and therefore you have to anticoagulate these patients. All this understanding came in this period, and therefore I think this was extremely helpful. And of course, lockdown is going to decrease the mortality surges that are going to occur because you don't present large number of people. What is important to remember is that lockdown is not going to change the numbers. The numbers will come a little late, but in a more flattened curve. But what has happened because of lockdown, in addition to all these benefits, 2 negative things that occurred. The first is this disease got stigmatized. This stigmatization, I think, is something which is the most difficult part of actually dealing with this disease. People, again, as I said, sitting in their homes, looking at the TVs and getting information that this is such a dangerous disease, actually started getting depressed. There have been suicides secondary to this. In my own practice, I've had patients who come to me. We have started to diagnose this patient. I tell them, okay, I'm sorry, you have cancer stomach or you have a cancer colon. And the first reaction is, oh, doctor, thank God it's not COVID. what they don't realize is that cancer anywhere in the body is more dangerous than COVID. But unfortunately, stigmas with this disease has gone so much. The second problem with this disease is the post-lockdown freedom that has occurred. I think what people didn't realize is that when you open the lockdown, it's not that the disease is gone away from our society. It just means that we have to carefully build up several things, and freedom is not a part of that. And what has happened in our country, as you can see, is this post-lockdown, the so-called the new normality has resulted in unrestricted freedom. Not only we see huge number of people gathering in different venues like wine shop, but also they've stopped. Many of them have not wearing masks, attending large gatherings, both festivities and so on. And this is the danger point, because this is going to cause again a widespread increase in this disease. And we have to know that when the new normal is not to do this, we have to change our habits. The new normal is physical distancing, hand hygiene, and mask. So I'll come back to that a little. But there are also other problems that we as a medical profession are facing when we are reopening our hospitals. A lot of asymptomatic cases coming in. Healthcare workers are getting infected. In fact, the percentage of healthcare workers getting infected now is increasing rapidly in our country. We've heard these reports both from Delhi, from Hyderabad, from Maharashtra, with not only getting infected with fatalities. What this does is it decreases the morale of these workers, and therefore we may find it more difficult to manage when more spikes of this disease occurs. And this is a new problem that we are facing. For example, coming to the hospitals has become again more difficult, again new normal. When a patient comes to a hospital, he has to go through this sanitizing chamber, and then he has to get his initial temperatures checks, initial screening done. They have to sit at different places, and finally when they reach the consulting doctor, it takes almost more than an hour. And this is again the new normal that all hospitals are following, that you can't just walk into the hospitals and see a doctor. You have to go through all these checks like you go through them in the airports. The same thing is happening here. And also let me show you what typically happens. Again, this is an example of what happened 2 days back in a hospital. An average OP we see at this point of time is about 400 cases. We screened all the patients. These are the patients who came to us for gastrointestinal problems, cardiac problems, and so on. But as a part of our screening procedure, we screened all these patients. And what we found was that 10% of them who didn't come for COVID, but 10% of them coming for other problems were positive for COVID, which means a significant percentage of them are asymptomatic carriers of this, and these are the ones who are going to spread the disease. And what we found was that in spite of 10% being positive for COVID, when we actually checked for antibody of COVID, only less than 1% are positive, which means we still haven't developed the immunity for this virus, but we still have a lot of positive patients who can spread this virus. This again is a new normal that we have to realize. So these are the asymptomatic carriers, and there's been a lot of controversy in asymptomatic carriers, because initially we thought these are the main way how it is transmitted, at least in the families. But then the WHO came back and told us maybe asymptomatic carriers are not important. We rejoiced because ICMR reports told us that in India, 60 to 70% of those who have this disease are actually asymptomatic carriers. But then now we came back with the new data to suggest that asymptomatic carriers are important, and they are the actual ones who are transmitting disease in the community, and they should be actually tackled. The reason why this confusion came was initial thinking that this was a droplet infection, that this infection came through fomites. You touch somebody's infected material and you got it to you. This was supposed to be a droplet infection. Aerosol was not so important, we thought, but this has changed now. This changed, in fact, a small paper came in New England Journal of Medicine in the form of a letter, which suggested that this virus can stay in different surfaces in different periods of time. For example, 72 hours in a surface, but also showed that it can stay in aerosol for 3 hours. And what we realized is that this is not only a droplet infection, but this is also an aerosol infection. If you are near somebody within 6 feet or 9 feet, if somebody is talking very loudly, sneezing, coughing, and so on, we can get the infection from this person. And this has now become a very important way. And the consequence of this is that masking, universal masking, has become very important. This is the new normal. universal masks are the new normal. In fact, if you look at several countries where this virus didn't spread so fast, was contained, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, was because as soon as the disease came, all of them started wearing masks. If you go to these countries, you still see them on the streets, everybody is wearing a mask. And we believe that this was the reason why it didn't spread very fast initially. And this was also one of the reasons why other countries like Italy, Spain, India, and US, it spread so rapidly, because we didn't take this into the fact and we didn't do universal masking. Of course, we now have several masks, we know what to use. I think this is a very important knowledge of what should be done. But there are many uncertainties in this new normal. We still don't know whom to test. There are various guidelines. Some of the guidelines say don't test asymptomatic carriers, but we know that these are carrying the virus, so why should we not? We know, or we don't know what is the optimum treatment. We're still developing many of this. We are not sure when the vaccine is going to come. We hope that it will be quick. And is there a prophylaxis? Is there a sense of using hydroxychloroquine weekly, at least healthcare workers? This is what ICMR actually suggests, but again, we still don't have definitive data. So many new uncertainties. But what is definite in this disease is that medical field has changed in two ways. Tele-education is becoming very common. Webinars like this are very common. In fact, all our regular conferences in the medical field have now been cancelled. Face-to-face, you can't sit and talk. It's all in form of webinars like this, which are happening, and this is good, and this is going to stay. It's not only the new normal, but it's going to be the future normal. Similarly, telemedicine has come up now. A lot of us are seeing our patients by telemedicine electronically. We see them and then prescribe. This used to be illegal before this, but now this has become legal. Now, what's going to happen in future? What will the world look like? What's going to be the new normal? This is something that everybody is thinking of, but unfortunately, it's extremely difficult to predict what the new normal is going to be. In fact, there are several modelings which have been done over the last few months, modelings from very reputed institutes like Johns Hopkins, from Michigan, from Oxford, from Cambridge, and so on. And just like weather reports, these modeling reports are very rarely true. This is because there's so much of biological variability involved that it's difficult to actually say what is true. In fact, let me show you an example of a Cambridge modeling of what is going to happen in our country, which came before the lockdowns came. They said if you lock down only 21 days, you're going to have a surge. They said if you lock down 21, 28 days, it will come down again a surge. They said if you lock down further, the surges are going to come down, especially if you lock down 49 days. So what did we do in India? We locked down for over 60 days, and yet we got a surge. So these lockdown models do not accurately predict because of certain inherent difficulties in this modeling that is there, and therefore I think we should not depend so much on them. So the new normal, according to me, is going to change. The new normal is going to be universal masking. It is going to be hygiene. Is going to be physical distancing. These are the three new normals that we have to follow. For example, before this coronavirus came, I remember when you're sitting in a flight or a plane or a bus, if somebody was wearing a mask, we're thinking, oh, what's wrong with this guy? He's wearing a mask. Maybe he has some disease. But now it's been the other way around. Now the new normal is if somebody is not wearing a mask, we say, what's wrong with this person is not wearing a mask? So this is the dramatic change in the mentality that has occurred. I think what coronavirus has taught us is very important is that we are not an island by ourselves. I think what happened in one small corner of the world can quickly go all over, envelop the whole world. This is very important to realize, this globalization, the new normal. We also should realize that nature is still very powerful. And if you cross the boundaries of nature, what consequences can come can be very disastrous, like what happened now. And thirdly, we should be prepared for future epidemics. The new normal is to be prepared for future epidemics, because these are going to certainly come. This is the harsh reality that we realize. And as medical practitioners and as scientists who are involved in this, we have to be prepared for pandemics that are going to be seen probably again in a lifetime, which can be as devastating as this. Thank you very much for your attention.
So we highly appreciate and thank you for sparing your time, giving us the important insights of the COVID pandemic and very useful information about the clinical spectrum, treatment regimens, mortality rates, lockdown benefits, and definition of new normal, and how we have to really follow it. Thank you so much, sir, once again. And I request over to Dr. CSIR-NEERI.
Well, I also like to thank Dr. Nageshwar Reddy for giving us a completely scientific picture of the COVID SARS-CoV-19, COVID-19. And what I realized that there is more panic and fear among the people, and we are more stigmatized. So this is one of the new norms for this disease. On a positive note, you have said that you are not afraid of mortality, but understanding the disease is important, because asymptomatic people are they the culprits or not is still, we don't know whether it's true, whether they have to be tested or not. So you have suggested masks, physical distancing as new normal, and these are the things we should take note of. And thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed, like any other. Thank you so much. Okay, Jyoti, thank you so much for introducing us to Dr. Nageshwar Reddy. And his presentation was excellent. So thank you very much. Now, okay, yeah. Now I'm waiting to hear my daughter, Dr. Athiya Kaple, speak. Dr. Athiya Kaple is CSR.
Mom, he said that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Athiya.
So thank you. And this is the last talk of this program. So I'm just going to take very few brief minutes. And thank you all, Mande sir, Rakesh sir, Dr. Reddy, Dr. Jamil, Jyoti madam, everybody for sticking through the end. And Tonya, really thank you so much for making time. And it really gives me great pleasure to connect with all of you and bring you this very learned panel. All our speakers have worked their way into leadership roles that they play today. And I hope that my OWSD colleagues, young and old, actually I changed that into senior and junior, would have taken inspiration from all the leadership qualities of our great panelists. Now, since you have already heard about OWSD from Tonya, I won't go there, but I would just like to share some things with you. As the Vice President of the Asia Pacific region, and this comprises of 25 countries in this region. So I sent out some feelers to the national chapter heads in my region. Unfortunately, all the countries do not have a national chapter, but whoever has, so I contacted them and I wanted to ask them how they are dealing with the pandemic and if there are any women-centric issues that this has brought about in their regions. So I have received replies from Turkey, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Myanmar, which I would like to share with you. The single most point that actually struck me was that none of their replies are different from what we are going through in India. Yes, the scales are different, of course, because of the country, but the general public, how the general public perceives this and the response from the governments is, I think, really universal. So very quickly, I just want to go through what they have written. So Turkey says the schools and kindergartens as well as universities were suspended. University students were sent back to their homes. But now everyone has started to implement the online education system. All the city hospitals were proclaimed to be pandemic hospitals and all annual leaves were suspended for the health professionals. During the last 8 weeks, at every weekend, they had curfew restrictions applied to all citizens by government order. Turkey has also donated a large number of masks and protective gear equipment to different countries. Many of their textile companies have included this mask production and a number of Turkish women were employed there. Office hours are functioning at a very flexible working schedule. Now Sri Lanka Now, surprisingly, Sri Lanka says that the first confirmed COVID case in Sri Lanka was reported in January 2020. And since then, they have been slowly getting this work from home schedule, and all the schools and universities were closed at a very early stage. Their lockdown was also like ours from 20th March and right up to May, and now people are all getting back into their work with the new normals. Bangladesh has given some data. They said 70% of the infected people and the deaths constitute from the male gender. The government of Bangladesh has also announced closure of all public and private offices till the 30th May, except for the hospitals, grocery, drug stores, and emergency services, exactly just like us. The thing, what the government of Bangladesh has done is introduced a program called Shahojoda. This is a plasma network program, and it facilitates the collection and distribution of plasma from all coronavirus recovered patients in Bangladesh. So this is something that they have just started. The Bangladesh National Chapter of OWSD has about 200 members, and they have various expertise, but most of them are, of course, because of the lockdown, not able to go to their labs, so their research projects are in a little bit of dilemma. But however, their Rice Research Institute has been asked to continue working throughout the lockdown, and they are even doing their field implementation work. Malaysia, the group from Malaysia has said that the government has done a very good job of controlling the spread of the infection, and of course, just like us, the area most affected is the economy, the work progress, research activities, and all major gatherings or meetings have been cancelled. Of course, women are not specially affected, or it is not a women-centric problem, but everybody is now in the stage of recovery. Myanmar has said that as a whatever they have faced, as a developing country, it has impacted in every sector of their lives. They are really proud that many women who are working in the health sector have not stepped back, despite the fact that they are really vulnerable because they are in the health sector and they are working, they are the frontline workers. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what's happening. My internet connection is going on and off. It's been doing it throughout the whole program. But like I said, that whatever you have heard from the different countries does not seem any different from what we are going through. And actually, when I read all the mails, it was just like, reading our local newspaper at home, So the feeling and the perspectives and everything is the same. And so now I come to what our topic was for today, new normal. What is the new normal? The first part of the new normal is this. So this is something that all of us have to be wearing. Of course, safety comes first, but it, now it's become like a second habit. And a friend of mine was saying that, maybe the children, will start thinking that this is also a part of your essential clothing, and they would not feel comfortable without a mask maybe when they grow up, if this new normal continues. But besides this, there are some very basic pressures that lie on a woman's plate, and I just wanted to highlight some of these. And the first most important is, work at home and work from home. Balancing these two is a real big challenge, and I for one feel like I've never worked this hard before nor got more tired. Balancing domestic and professional spheres has really never been more challenging. But still, me and people like me are still blessed because we have a job. You know, when so many across the world are really worried about job security, are they going to get their jobs back or not? We really are lucky that we do have some kind of a job security. We are still working and we have a comfortable home to go to. We have nice people like you to connect to. So that is also, job security is also something that is really is a frightening aspect actually. The other day when I was returning home from work, I saw a lady on the roadside in one makeshift tent just on the footpath. She was making rotis and there are 3 hungry mouths waiting. Now I'm sure this is not a scene that is unique to Nagpur. It is across the whole developing world. But this really made me think, how can science and technology reach out there? You know, we are really doing a lot of work. The whole scientific community, CSIR as a unit, and outside CSR also, the whole scientific community is really working on so many different fronts to work with the government to give a stable, support to deal with this pandemic. But are we, really reaching? Science and technology is not really reaching to that root cause. This is just food for thought. I really don't have a solution, but I saw this yesterday and I thought I should share with you that we also maybe need to see how we can, reach everybody. So when I say, whenever I have asked people for creating jobs for women, at the time of crisis, we have all been trying to put our heads together and see what support we can give. But across the sectors, to NGOs, to the scientists, to the general public, whenever I've asked this question, that what are the jobs that we can create for women in this time of crisis, I have always got 2-3 very common responses. They say mask making craft from bamboo, making achar, pickle, papad. I mean, come on. और कुछ नहीं है क्या women को करने के लिए? This is also very important. Yes, I agree. But what about quality managers for making these masks and these food products? What about managers in transactions? Transaction from the maker to the buyer. What about the Internet of Things? What about online teaching? So people, please, if you are stuck in this mindset, broaden your vision. We really need more answers and we need it really quick. So another point was also not related to science and technology, but it is a very disturbing news that you see on many TV channels and on print. And that is the increase of domestic violence and abuse during this lockdown period. I have heard that helplines are working overtime to report these. And of course, many also go an equal number, or I would say more, go unreported. So again, science and technology does not play a role here, but I wanted to highlight something for all the women, that mental strength and perseverance is really required. So we need to find a way to be sane, to tide over this crisis and to go ahead and still bring our lives back into normal. And moving away from this very disturbing point, I will come to my last point. I really believe that women have greater resilience. If anyone can make this new normal livable, it is us. So stay connected, stay strong, and stay safe. The OWSD community needs a lot of mentoring. Be there. Thank you.
Adya, that was a wonderful message. Only one point you didn't touch upon is the teachers and the lecturers who are jobless for the last 3 months. And they have not got their salaries, especially the private schools and others. And they're doing menial jobs nowadays. And it's really a very sad situation for those people also. I feel so sad about them because they are our mentors, and they are our teachers, our gurus, and they have no jobs.
Yeah. So like Dr. Rakesh sir had said in his talk about a lot of different job sectors. But I think now, before we ask Ramya to propose the vote of thanks, if we could have any questions. I had seen some hands raised at one point of time. So if they are still here, if anybody has any questions.
There is a question from Ankit Gupta, and the question is, does wearing 3 to 5 layer mask for long have health implications? If so, how do we trade off? How long it can be worn safely so that exhaled carbon dioxide inhalation be balanced without severe health implications?
So maybe Dr. Reddy will be the best person to reply to this.
Yeah, so as I understand, the question is, how long can we wear a mask and what is the safety? Before we go to that, it's important to realize that there are several types of masks. The standard cloth mask, which is advocated by ICMR and other organizations for everybody who are not healthcare workers, is okay to wear for long periods of time. But long period of time meaning you can wear this mask safely for 12 hours, and obviously after 12 hours when you're sleeping, you take off the mask, you can wash and reuse them. The surgical masks are called 3-ply masks. The blue masks, what you see in pictures and all, people wearing surgeons, they're called 3-ply masks. These masks can be worn for a maximum of 12 hours. They're easy to breathe through, but unfortunately their protection is only 70%, not 100%. But these masks are also disposable masks. They should not be reused. They have to be thrown off. On an average, they cost about 5 to 6 rupees. The third category of masks are the so-called N95 masks, or more specialized masks. These masks should be worn only by healthcare workers or those who have exposure to potential patients. N95 masks costs about 200 to 400 rupees, depending on where you're getting from. And these masks also cannot be worn for more than 6 hours. Because if you wear for more than 6 hours, you can get a buildup of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide in the body, and oxygen saturations can come down. So you have to take them off and then put them off. These masks can be reused, but not immediately next day. You have to keep them aside for 4 days, and the 4th day you can use them. So what most hospitals do is give doctors 4 or 5 masks of N95, and they use one every day and then reuse the second month, so that a cycle is formed, so you can use this mask up to 4 times, but after 4 days. Again, when you wear N95 mask, it's actually very suffocating, so I don't advise that all the general non-doctors or healthcare workers who are not healthcare workers should not use this mask, because it can be quite suffocating and you can build up levels of carbon dioxide in the body, which is not very safe. Because every 2-3 hours you have to adjust this mask, and not good to adjust the mask. So in summary, for non-healthcare workers, I would suggest even a cloth mask. You can wear it up to 12 hours, you can wash it, reuse it again. For healthcare workers, the choice is between a simple surgical mask versus a N95 mask, and if you are exposed to a lot of these viruses, N95 is the ideal mask.
Hello.
Ramya?
The next question we have from Rima Biswas madam. In this pandemic, we have seen so many disinfection products coming up, like antibacterial cutleries, antibacterial cloths, UV disinfection gadgets, sanitizers, etc. How good is it to use these products indiscriminately? Like wearing masks all the time and inhaling carbon dioxide, is it not a health hazard? I think Dr. Reddy has already explained about wearing masks. Maybe he can throw light upon these antibacterial cutleries, antibacterial cloths, and UV disinfection gadgets, sanitizers, etc.
So I think, this is a very often asked question, and I think we are overdoing it in terms of using this antibacterial disinfectants. The COVID, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is RNA virus, which is very sensitive to a disinfectant. So alcohol, more than 70% concentration, a simple soap is sufficient to completely wash off this virus. We don't have to use this antibacterial agents at all, because what is very important is normally when we interact with people, eat food, what is in our hands, lot of bacteria are going in, and our gut microbiome has billions of bacteria, and this is normal. We cannot change this, we cannot sterilize this. So therefore, one should not go for all these antibacterial disinfectants. All it is suggested is that hand hygiene in form of washing your hands with soap, especially if you're touching something and then before you eat, definitely, or even if you open the door, when you enter your house, open the door, the first thing you should do is wash your hands. This type of simple precautions, but don't kindly go for this heavy disinfectants, because there are other consequences that can occur with this, especially it can change the gut microbiome, which is not very good. It can produce some changes in your skin, which is not very good.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from T. Rajesh from NEERI Chennai Zonal Center. His question is, intense lockdown in major cities, example Chennai from today, how do we researchers get supported? It's like new abnormal every day. DG sir, maybe can throw a light on this?
Would you repeat the question again?
Sir, intense lockdown in major cities, example Chennai from today. How do we researchers get supported? It's like a new abnormal every day.
See, when a challenge like this is thrown to us, it's our duty to actually stand up together and make sure that the rate of infection and the rate of spread of the disease is contained as much as possible. It is quite obvious that a lot of things are getting disrupted because of that. It is not only research that is getting affected, but there are serious implications on the world economies, on the jobs of people, and whole lot of that. That's an unfortunate part, but nonetheless, it's a much larger thing that humanity is at a risk, and therefore, I guess we will have to live up to that thing. I mean, we can feel sorry about not doing our work at the same pace that we want to do, but nonetheless, for the cause of limiting the spread of the disease, it is better to follow the norms that have been told to us to follow. That is social distancing and not working for a few days or something like that. I'm afraid, I mean, it's not a very positive answer, but that's how it is. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions if anyone has?
Maybe Dr. Tonia, would you like to say something, women-centric, before we conclude?
Well, I've just really enjoyed listening, actually. I think it's been incredibly informative for me to hear these wonderful presentations and all of the time and effort that people have given to presenting their work. And yeah, I mean, I guess to add on to that last question, I think it's absolutely the case that, we should all be being protective and preventive, but there are ways that we can communicate with each other which seem to be incredibly important, right? That seems to be psychologically and in many ways essential that we continue to collaborate in some ways, and fortunately we have this possibility through these wonderful options of being online. And I think scientists in particular, obviously much of science depends on being actually physically in a laboratory, and there are disastrous consequences for your testing animals, for your plants. There's also, I think, an underestimated fallout of just not being able to talk to people about your research in a kind of casual, bumping into people way, that networking that goes on at conferences where younger students can meet older, senior people. It's not necessarily easy to do that online. You can't make these kind of chance connections. So I think perhaps a task for us at OST, and perhaps a task at your institute too, is to try and understand. What I see happening a lot is that, for example, you see it with school teaching and you see it with university teaching, that there is a sense that it just has to be transferred from one context to the other. So you have your teaching hours. So in Italy, it's disastrous. In Italy, you have lessons that go from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the school day, which is already terrible idea that you can sit on your seat and do 8 to 2 every day focused studying. But that's just been transferred online, and kids are sitting through 6 or 7 continuous hours of Skype with just one person lecturing to them. And of course, they're switching off, they're doing their phones, it's not feasible, it's not possible. So I think it would be very interesting to really consider, how do we make this work online? What's different about the online context? How do we connect with people in a different way? Just to give another example, we tried it at OSD, at our offices, and with ICTP and with TWAS that we share offices with, to install this kind of coffee morning, so that there would be a coffee morning space from 10 o'clock to 11:30 every day, and people could drop in. And this seemed like a really, really good idea to keep people could know that there was this possibility. So if they were feeling isolated, every day they would know there was this possibility. But in practice, actually, they've all stopped these coffee mornings. And the reason is because you can't force everybody into the same room. Online, if somebody's there, we haven't yet learned to use well those kind of breakout rooms, which are, even on Microsoft Teams, there are these breakout rooms. But, if you go to a coffee morning at your institute, you see who's in the room and you think, these are my friends, I always talk to them, I'll go and talk to them. Or you think, I don't know this person so well, but I could just say something and I could have a conversation with them. In this context, online, those connections are very hard to make. And I think that they're fundamental to science, and I think that they're fundamental for women scientists in particular, who are very, very often excluded from the old boys network and all of these kinds of networking opportunities. So I think that I really like this discussion about the new normal, and I think it's a question of exactly what you've done in this wonderful context of these 2 hours or so discussion, is to say, what's it looking like in the future? But more than that, how can we make it so it's better than it was before? Like, how can we take advantage of all of these different things we're being forced to do and make them better, but not just transfer them? I think that that's really, really important, that we're not just transferring the old context into the new context, but we're trying to understand, how is it radically different, and what are the implications of each of those radically different elements? And I think it's beautiful work to do.
Yeah, thank you, Tonia. I think we'll wrap up now. And just one more message before I ask Dr. Ramya to give the vote of thanks. A colleague of mine has just taken a screenshot of this page, with all your pictures, and sent it to me and said, this is also the new normal. And now the photographer of NEERI is out of a job, because for any program, he doesn't have to come and click pictures. We just take screenshots here and post it. So now I will ask Ramya to propose the vote of thanks. And before that, thank you from my side to everybody for agreeing to be a part of this program. Thank you to all the audience who joined us. And Ramya is a very bright and young researcher in the NEERI Zonal Lab at Hyderabad, and she's always been a big support to all OWSD activities, right from planning to execution to follow-ups and to everything. So thank you, Ramya, and over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. The international webinar, which is on the COVID realities dealing with the new normal, was organized in collaboration with CSIR-NEERI and OWSD NCI. The Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, OWSD, is an international organization founded in 1987 with the objective of empowering women, strengthening their role in the development process, and promoting their representation in scientific and technological leadership. It is a program unit of UNESCO. The national chapter of OWSD India connects women in science from the country. The group provides interaction platforms to mentor and group all members and develop leadership skills. Dr. Shekhar Mande, DG CSIR, has actually brought gender balance in CSR system. We not only thank him for attending this webinar, but also for creating gender balance in CSIR, which is really appreciable. Sir, your points on leadership are well noted and I'm sure it is beneficial to all our audience. Dr. Renu Swarup had to leave due to other commitments. We really appreciate her time given to this webinar because she believes in the mandate of this subject. She herself has organized many programs to promote leadership in India. Tony Blowers is the coordinator of OWSG and so is part of our family. She herself timelessly works to empower women in the entire developing world, but still she found time to join us and underline the importance of the Indian National Chapter. On behalf of all OWSG members, I thank her. Padma Bhushan Dr. Nageshwar Reddy, thank you for making time and giving such an inspiring talk. We are really honored to have the only women fellow of the Royal Society from India in our midst. Thank you, Dr. Gagandeep Kang, for taking time to be with us, and we really enjoyed your talk. Dr. Rakesh Kumar, Director CSIR-NEERI, has always been a source of support for any initiative taken by us. Thank you, sir, for being an inspirational and motivating leader. I want to thank Dr. Atya Kaple, Vice President OWSG, and Dr. Kaisar Jamil, President Indian National Chapter OWSG, for being the main driving forces in organizing this international webinar in a very, very short span of time. Thank you, ma'am. I also acknowledge Dr. Jyoti, Vice President Indian National Chapter OWSG, for her help. Last but not the least, I would like to thank Dr. Ashish Sharma and his team, the reason behind the smooth organization of this webinar without any glitches. And finally, thanks to all my colleagues and audience for being with us in successfully organizing this international webinar. I hope this webinar was beneficial to each and every one of you. Thank you to everyone and all the speakers.
So thank you. I think we can log off now. Thank you, Mande sir, for being here till the end. Thank you, Tonya, for joining us. Ashish, before we log off, Tonya wants the chat to be mailed to her because she's unable to access the chat.
Okay. On my behalf also, I thank all the speakers and Atya and Dr. Rakesh.
Here. So would you like to make some comment before we log off?
It's all good, very nicely organized, and although we are sitting at different places within the same organization, it's wonderful to have all of you here. So let's hope we specifically get on each and specific topic separately and discuss it more deeply. So big thank you to all the dignitaries and our DG Dr. Mande, Dr. Antonio, and Dr. Reddy. Thank you. My colleague Dr. Anjan is also here. He was passive listener during this period. Welcome, Anjan. Good to see you.
Thanks, Dr. Rakesh. I'm never passive. I was listening quite actively. Trust me.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.